The midday sun hammered down on dust water like a blacksmith's blow, turning the air into something you could almost chew. Ada Quinn bent over her needle, squinting in the dim light of Ruth's boarding house parlor. The leather coat in her lap belonged to a cowboy who'd torn it on barbed wire, or so he claimed. The neat slash looked more like a knife cut to her practiced eye. $3, she said without looking up when boot heels stopped at her table. That's steep for mending. Ada's hands stilled. The voice was deep, measured, with none of the drawl most cowboys affected. She raised her eyes to find a man who didn't match his voice, tall, yes, but lean in the way of someone who worked rather than commanded. His clothes were quality but dusty, hat-shadowing features that might have been handsome if she cared about such things anymore. $2 for the mending, she said, returning to her work. $1 for not asking how it really got torn. A pause, then, surprisingly, a low chuckle. Fair enough. He pulled out the coins, setting them on the scarred wood with careful precision. When Ada reached for them, she noticed his hands calloused like a working man's. But the nails were clean. Contradictions. She'd learned to distrust contradictions. "It'll be ready tomorrow," she said. "No rush. Name's Everly. Colt Everly." Ada's needle paused for half a heartbeat. Everyone in Dustwater knew that name, the man who'd built an empire from a single bull calf and a gift for reading weather patterns. The richest rancher in 3 counties. They said, the kind of man who could buy whatever he wanted. "Tomorrow," she repeated, not offering her own name. He tipped his hat and left, taking his contradictions with him. Ruth Calder bustled in from the kitchen, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. "Was that who I think it was?" "Money spends the same no matter who carries it," Ada said. Ruth made a sound that could have meant anything. At 45, widowed these past 10 years. She'd given Ada shelter when she'd arrived in Dustwater 6 months ago, with little more than her sewing kit and a determination to never depend on anyone again. Ruth knew better than to pry into that particular wound. "Speaking of money," Ruth said, settling heavily into the opposite chair. "Kincaid came by again while you were at the mercantile." Ada's jaw tightened. "The payment's not due for another week." "Try telling him that. He's calling in notes all over town. Says the railroad's bringing new prosperity. And prosperity means higher land values." Ruth's weathered face creased with worry. "If I can't pay, he'll take the boarding house." "He can't just—" "He can. He's the bank." Ruth stood, smoothing her apron with hands that trembled slightly. "I've got biscuits in the oven." Alone again. Ada stabbed her needle through the leather with more force than necessary. Love is a lie. She'd told herself every day for 3 years. But apparently, so was justice. The afternoon wore on, bringing with it the kind of heat that made even breathing feel like work. Ada had moved to the porch, hoping for a breeze that never came. She was hemming a dress for the schoolteacher when she heard its shouts, the thunder of hooves, and above it all, a child's terrified scream. A water wagon careened around the corner. Driver slumped sideways, horses running wild. Riders followed, firing shots that sent townsfolk diving for cover. On the wagon's bed, a small figure clung to the sideboard, dark braids whipping in the wind. Ada didn't think. She dropped the dress and ran, hiking her skirts as she sprinted into the street. The wagon veered toward the mercantile steps. The child, a girl, maybe 6 years old, lost her grip. Ada caught her just as she fell, the impact sending them both rolling in the dust. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she curled her body around the child, shielding her from the horse's hooves that thundered past, inches away. Strong hands pulled them to safety. Ada looked up into Colt Everly's face, his earlier calm replaced by something fierce. "You hurt?" he asked. "No." Ada sat up, checking the girl for injuries. Wide brown eyes stared back at her, shocked but unharmed. "Shh, you're safe now." "My wagon." Someone groaned. The driver had fallen near the horse trough. blood seeping from a gash on his temple. Ada recognized him, Diego, one of Everly's men. Colt was already kneeling beside him. "Miguel, get the doctor. You—" He looked at a gathering cowboy. "Catch those horses before they hurt someone." "That's my water," another voice cut in. Silas Kincaid pushed through the crowd, his city-bought suit unmarred by dust. "Everly, your man just lost me a valuable shipment." "Your water?" Colt stood slowly, even covered in dust. He managed to make Kincaid's finery look cheap. "Last I checked, Raven Spring was still open range." "Not anymore." Kincaid produced a paper from his vest. "Bought the rights yesterday. That water you've been stealing is mine now." Ada helped the girl to her feet, but her attention fixed on the two men. David versus Goliath. Except David owned the bank, and Goliath just wanted to water his cattle. "Stealing." Colt's voice dropped dangerously low. "My family's been drawing from Raven Spring for 20 years. Times change. You want water, you pay for it, same as everyone else." "This is about the railroad deal, isn't it?" Colt stepped closer. "You can't force people off their land by cutting off their water." Kincaid smiled, a thin, satisfied expression. "I'm not forcing anyone, just charging fair market value for a scarce resource. Supply and demand. Everly. Even a cowboy should understand that." The child in Ada's arms whimpered. She was heavier than she looked, solid and warm and alive. Ada found herself thinking of another child, another time, another place where men's greed had cost too much. "How much?" Colt asked. "For you, let's say, $50 per 1,000 gallons. Gasps rippled through the crowd. At those prices, most of the small ranchers would go under within a month. "That's robbery," someone called out. "That's business," Kincaid replied. He tipped his hat mockingly at Colt. "Water your stock while you can. Everly, come next week. There'll be armed guards at the spring." He strode away, leaving silence in his wake. Then everyone began talking at once. Colt ignored them all, returning to where Diego sat propped against the trough, the doctor examining his wound. "He'll live," Dr. Morrison announced. "But he needs rest." "Take him to my place," Ruth said, appearing at Ada's elbow. "I've got a room." Colt reached for his wallet, but Ada surprised herself by speaking up. "No charge for injured men." He studied her for a long moment. "You're the seamstress." "Among other things." She'd been a midwife, too, before her world had shattered like poorly fired clay. "What's your name?" "Does it matter?" "It does to me." Something in his tone made her meet his eyes. What she saw there wasn't what she expected from a rich man, no condescension, no assumption of rights, just genuine interest and perhaps a hint of respect. "Ada Quinn," she said finally. "Thank you, Miss Quinn, for saving Ivy." "Ivy?" Ada looked down at the girl still clinging to her skirts. "My ward," Colt said. "My foreman's daughter. He died last winter, and she—" He cleared his throat. "She likes to ride in the water wagons." "I'm sorry," Ivy whispered. "I wanted to see town." "We'll discuss that later," Colt told her gently. Then to Ada, "Name your price for saving her." "I don't want—" "Please," the word came out rough. "I pay my debts." Ada felt the old familiar anger rise. Everything was a transaction to men like him. Service rendered, payment due, no room for simple human decency. "Fine," she said coldly. "My price is this, forget you owe me anything. I won't be any man's creditor." Surprise flickered across his features. Before he could respond, Ruth tugged Ada's sleeve. "Help me get Diego inside," she said, but her eyes were saying something else, something urgent. They managed to get the injured man settled in Ruth's smallest room. Only then did Ruth speak her mind. "You shouldn't antagonize him." "Everly," Ada snorted. "What's he going to do? Refuse to let me mend his coat?" "Not him," Kincaid. Ruth's voice dropped. Ada, if he's serious about those water prices, I'll have to close within a month. The boarding house barely makes ends meet as it is. There has to be something. There is. Ruth wouldn't meet her eyes. Kincaid offered to forgive the loan if I accommodate certain guests, the kind that would transform this place into something else entirely. Ada's stomach turned. Ruth, no. What choice do I have? It's that or lose everything. Ruth sank onto the bed beside Diego. Unless... What? The Everly Ranch. They'll need extra hands if they're going to fight this water grab. And they'll need someone with medical knowledge if it gets ugly. Ruth finally looked at her. It would be temporary, just until we figure something else out. I'm not going to work for the one man in this territory with enough power to stand up to Kincaid. Ruth gripped her hands. Ada, honey, I know you've got reasons to distrust wealthy men, but sometimes the enemy of our enemy. Ada pulled away, through the window. She could see Colt Everly lifting Ivy into a wagon, his hands gentle despite their size. The child had her arms around his neck, completely trusting. Love is a lie, Ada reminded herself, but water was life, and Kincaid was threatening both. I'll think about it, she said. That night, the wind changed. It came from the north, carrying the scent of rain that would probably never fall. Ada lay in her narrow bed, listening to the boarding house settle around her, and made her decision. She'd go to the Everly Ranch. She'd take their money and use it to get herself and Ruth away from Dustwater. She'd keep her heart locked away where gentle hands and kind eyes couldn't reach it. After all, she'd learned her lesson 3 years ago. Love was just another word for leaving, and leaving always hurt more than staying alone. But as she finally drifted towards sleep, she found herself thinking of a little girl's weight in her arms and the way a rich man's voice had broken when he'd said, please. Contradictions. She'd have to be more careful of those. The Everly Ranch sprawled across the valley like something alive, breathing with the rhythm of work and purpose. Ada arrived at dawn, her carpetbag weighing heavy in her hand, doubt heavier in her chest. The main house rose 3 stories, built from local stone and timber, but it was the outbuildings that drew her eye-barns. Bunkhouses, workshops, all speaking of industry rather than idle wealth. Miss Quinn. Miguel Ortega tipped his hat as he approached. The foreman moved with the careful dignity of a man who'd earned his position through decades of skill. Mr. Everly asked me to show you around. Where is he? Ada asked, then caught herself. It didn't matter where Colt Everly was. Checking the west pasture, lost some fence line last night. Miguel's weathered face darkened. Strange how it happened right where our cattle usually water. He led her past the corrals where cowboys were already at work, their voices mixing with the lowing of cattle and the ring of hammer on metal. Ada had expected to feel out of place, but there was something familiar about the purposeful chaos like Ruth's boarding house on laundry day. But larger, louder. This here's the pump house, Miguel said, stopping at a sturdy building near the main well. We've got 3 wells operating, plus shares in Raven Spring, or we did, until yesterday. Inside, the machinery hummed with effort. Ada understood enough about mechanics to appreciate the system pipes running to troughs, overflow channels leading to irrigation ditches, everything designed to waste nothing. And Mr. Everly built this himself, Miguel continued. First year the ranch turned profit. He spent it all on water infrastructure. Said a man who doesn't plan for drought doesn't plan to last. Wise, Ada admitted grudgingly. They moved on to the bunkhouse, where she'd be tending any injuries. Then to a small cabin set apart from the others. Your quarters, Miguel said. Mr. Everly figured you'd want privacy. The cabin was clean, sparse but comfortable. A bed with a quilt that looked handmade, a washstand, a small table by the window. On the table sat a box of medical supplies and a ledger. What's this? Ada asked, opening the ledger. The pages were filled with neat columns names, wages, dates, payment records. Mr. Everly insists everything be documented fair and square. Your wages listed there $1.50 per day, plus board. It was generous. Too generous. Ada's suspicion flared. What's the catch? Miguel's eyes crinkled. No catch. Señorita, that's just how Mr. Everly operates. Fair wages for fair work. After Miguel left, Ada unpacked slowly, trying to reconcile what she'd seen with what she'd expected. Rich men didn't pay $1.50 per day for medical help. They didn't build cabins for temporary workers or keep meticulous wage records to ensure fairness. A commotion outside interrupted her thoughts. Through the window, she saw riders approaching fast. Colt Everly in the lead, even from a distance. She could see the tension in his bearing. Ada grabbed the medical supplies and hurried outside. The riders dismounted in a swirl of dust, one man cradling his arm against his chest. What happened? She asked, moving to the injured cowboy. Found him strung up in barbed wire. Colt said grimly, The new stuff Kincaid's been selling. It was stretched across the trail to Raven Spring. Ada examined the cowboy's arm, finding deep lacerations beneath the torn shirt. I need clean water and better light. Help me get him inside. They carried him to the main house, to a room that clearly served as an infirmary. Ada worked quickly, cleaning and stitching while Colt held the man steady. She was aware of him watching her work, those dark eyes missing nothing. You've done this before, he said. Yes. She tied off the last stitch. Keep it clean and dry. Come see me in 3 days to check for infection. The cowboy mumbled thanks and stumbled out, supported by his friends. Ada began cleaning up, very aware that Colt hadn't moved. You're not just a seamstress, he said. Most women are more than one thing, Mr. Everly. We have to be. Call me Colt. He paused. I knew a midwife once with hands that steady, back in Kansas. Ada's hands stilled for just a moment. Lots of women have steady hands. True. He didn't push. Instead, he rolled down his sleeves and said, I want to show you something. She followed him outside to a ledger office attached to the main house. Maps covered one-wall property lines, water rights, cattle trails. Red marks indicated recent problems. 23 incidents in the past month, Colt said. Cut fences, poisoned water holes, scattered herds, all on properties that won't sell to Kincaid. Why hasn't the Sheriff Pike? Colt's laugh was bitter. He's been finding reasons to look the other way. Amazing how much crime he doesn't see when Kincaid's involved. Ada studied the map. A pattern emerged. The incidents formed a rough circle around Dustwater, with Raven Spring at the center. He's cutting off escape routes. Smart woman. Colt moved to stand beside her. He smelled of leather and honest sweat. Nothing like the cologne-drenched merchants she'd known. Question is, what do we do about it? Ada stepped back. I'm here to tend injuries, not fight range wars. The two might be the same thing before this is over. He met her eyes directly. I won't lie to you. Miss Quinn, this is going to get worse before it gets better. If you want to leave... I don't run. The words came out sharper than intended. Something flickered in his expression approval. Neither do I. A knock interrupted them. Miguel entered, face grim. Boss, we got bigger problems. The boys watching the south pasture just rode in. There's a grass fire heading this way. Colt was moving before Miguel finished speaking. Ada followed, caught up in the urgency. Cowboys were already mounting up, loading shovels and wet blankets. Winds from the south. Colt called out. We make our stand at Willow Creek. Miguel, take half the men and start a backfire. Rest of you, with me. What can I do? Ada asked. He looked at her, seeming to weigh options. Can you drive a wagon? Yes. Take the water wagon to Willow Creek. We'll need it for the men and any burns." He was already swinging into his saddle. "And Miss Quinn, if the fire jumps the creek, you run. Promise me." Before she could respond, he was gone in a thunder of hooves. Ada ran for the wagon, finding it already hitched. Ivy stood nearby, eyes wide with fear. "Is the ranch going to burn?" the girl asked. "Not if your uncle can help it." Ada lifted her into the wagon. "You're coming with me." The ride to Willow Creek was the longest of Ada's life. Smoke rose black against the sky, and even from miles away, she could smell it, grass and sage and destruction. Ivy pressed close to her side, trembling. They reached the creek as the cowboys were spreading out along its banks. The fire was visible now, a writhing orange line consuming everything in its path. Ada had seen prairie fires before, but never one moving with such deliberate purpose. "It's not natural," she heard one cowboy mutter. "Too straight, too even." Colt appeared at the wagon's side, face already smudged with soot. "Good, you made it. Stay here unless—" A shout cut him off. The backfire Miguel's team had set was working, but the main fire had sent up sparks. Spot fires bloomed in the grass on their side of the creek. What followed was organized chaos. Men beat at flames with wet blankets, shoveled dirt, cursed and fought for every foot of ground. Ada found herself running with buckets, refilling canteens, wrapping wet cloths around faces. At some point, Colt materialized beside her, beating out a flame that had crept too close to the wagon. His shirt was singed, his hands already blistered. "Let me see," Ada demanded. "Later," but he accepted the wet cloth she pressed into his hands. "You're doing good." "Don't patronize me. I'm not." He met her eyes, and she saw genuine respect there. Most people would have run. "I told you, I don't run." "No," he said softly, "you don't." The battle lasted hours. By the time they had the fire contained, the sun was setting, painting the smoky sky in shades of blood and ash. Men collapsed where they stood, exhausted. Ada moved among them with water and what medical supplies she had. She found Colt sitting on a boulder, staring at the blackened landscape. His hands were worse than she'd thought, blistered and raw. "Don't argue," she said, kneeling beside him with her supplies. He didn't. She worked in silence, cleaning and bandaging, trying not to notice how he didn't flinch even when it must have hurt. His hands were large but graceful, calloused from work but gentle in their strength. Contradictions again. "It was said," he said quietly. "I know. They're not even trying to hide it anymore." His jaw tightened. "Kincaid wants a war." "What are you going to do?" "What I have to protect my people, my land." He looked at her. "That includes you now." "I don't need protection." "Everyone needs protection sometimes." His voice was gentle, without condescension. "That's not weakness. That's human." Ada finished wrapping his hands, unsettled by his words. She'd built her life on not needing anyone, on being strong enough alone. But sitting here in the gathering dusk, surrounded by men who'd fought together against destruction, she felt something crack in her armor. "Thank you," Colt said, "for today." She stood quickly, needing distance. "It's what you're paying me for." His expression shuddered. "Of course." On the ride back, Ivy fell asleep against Ada's shoulder. The child smelled of smoke and sweat and innocence. Ada found herself holding her carefully, protectively. "She likes you," Colt said, riding alongside the wagon. "Children are poor judges of character." "I disagree. They see clearer than adults sometimes." He paused. "She hasn't trusted anyone since her father died." "What happened to her mother?" "They'd birthing her. Tom raised her alone. Best he could." Colt's voice roughened. "When the fever took him last winter, I promised I'd look after her." "Didn't realize how hard it would be." "You're doing fine," Ada said, surprising herself with the sincerity. Am I? I can run a ranch, manage cattle and cowboys, but a little girl, he shook his head. I'm out of my depth. The admission of vulnerability caught her off guard. Rich men didn't admit weakness, didn't share doubts with hired help. But then, Colt Everly kept defying her expectations. They reached the ranch as full dark fell. Cowboys were already sharing stories of the day, exhaustion and pride mixing in their voices. Ada helped get Ivy to bed, then returned to her cabin, bone-tired but strangely reluctant to be alone. She was washing the soot from her face when a knock came. She opened the door to find Colt holding a tray. "Ruth sent supper," he said. "Figured you'd be too tired to come to the main house." "Ruth's not here." "I sent Miguel to town for supplies. He stopped by the boarding house." Colt set the tray on her table. "She also sent a message." Ada tensed. "What?" Kincaid raised her interest rate. "The loan's now due in 5 days instead of next week." The words hit like a physical blow. Ada sank into a chair. "He can't do that." "He can. It's probably in the fine print somewhere." Colt sat across from her. "I could loan her the money." "No." The refusal was automatic. "Pride's expensive, Miss Quinn." "It's not pride." Ada met his eyes. "It's survival. Take a loan from you to pay Kincaid that just changes who holds the chains." "I don't deal in chains." "Every debt is a chain." They stared at each other across the small table. Finally, Colt stood. "The offer stands," he said. "No interest, no conditions. Just neighbors helping neighbors." After he left, Ada sat alone in her cabin, staring at the untouched food. Through her window, she could see the main house, windows glowing warm against the night. She could hear distant laughter, the sound of community. For the first time in 3 years, Ada Quinn felt the dangerous pull of belonging. It scared her more than any fire. She'd come here for temporary work, for money to escape. But something was shifting, like prairie wind changing direction. The ranch was seeping into her bones, the work, the purpose, the people who fought together against forces trying to destroy them. And Colt Everly, with his contradictions and his careful kindness, was becoming harder to dismiss. Love is a lie, she reminded herself. But as she finally ate Ruth's cooling supper, she wondered if other things might be true. Things like respect, trust, the possibility that some fights were worth joining. Tomorrow, she'd be practical again. Tonight, with her hands still smelling of smoke and medicine, she allowed herself to imagine what it might mean to stay. The storm came without warning, as sudden things often did in the territory. One moment the sky was clear. The next it turned the color of old pewter. Ada had just finished checking on a cowboy's healing wound when the first hailstone struck the roof like bullets. "Get the horses in," Colt's voice carried over the rising wind. Cowboys scattered in all directions, but Ada could see they'd never save them all. The remuda was spread across the south pasture, and the hail was already the size of marbles. She ran for the nearest corral, where a dozen horses milled in panic. The gate latch was stiff, fighting her as hail pelted down harder. A stone caught her shoulder, sending sharp pain down her arm. "Let me." Colt appeared beside her, throwing his weight against the gate. Together they got it open, but the horses were too frightened to move. "The barn!" Ada shouted over the storm. "We need to drive them." What followed was controlled chaos. Ada had worked horses before another life, another time, but never in conditions like these. Hail bounced off the ground like popcorn, turning the earth white. The stones grew larger, some big as walnuts now, drawing blood where they struck. She grabbed a rope, fashioning it into a makeshift lead, and plunged in among the terrified animals. A bay mare reared, hooves flashing past her head. Ada dodged, caught the mare's halter, and used her momentum to guide her toward the barn. Where one went, others followed. "Watch out!" Miguel's warning came too late. A young stallion, crazed with fear, broke from the herd. His shoulder caught Ada, spinning her into the fence. She hit hard, breath leaving her lungs, but kept her grip on the rope. Then Colt was there, placing himself between her and the panicked horses. He moved with an economy of motion, every gesture calculated to calm and direct. No wasted movement, no showing off, just competence born of years of experience. They got the horses inside just as the hail reached its peak. Stones the size of hen's eggs hammered down, denting anything metal, shredding what plant life the fire had spared. Ada leaned against the barn wall, catching her breath, watching Colt check each horse for injury. "You all right?" he asked, moving toward her. "Fine." But when she tried to straighten, pain lanced through her ribs. His hands were on her shoulders, steadying her. "Where? It's nothing. The stallion caught me." She tried to step away, but the world tilted. "Miguel, take over here," Colt ordered. Before Ada could protest, he'd swept her up in his arms. "Don't argue." "I can walk." Not well enough. His tone brooked no argument, but his hold was careful, mindful of her injuries. He carried her to the main house, to the same room where she'd tended others. Setting her gently on the examination table, he stepped back. "I'll send for—" "No." Ada gritted her teeth, probing her ribs. "Nothing's broken, just bruised. You can't know that without—" "I know my own body, Mr. Everly." The words came out sharper than intended. His jaw tightened. "Colt, and you're being stubborn." "I'm being practical. Save the doctor for real emergencies." She slid off the table, biting back a gasp. "I need to check the other men." "The other men are fine. You're not." He moved closer, and she could see genuine concern in his eyes. "Why is it so hard for you to accept help?" The question hung between them, loaded with more than he probably knew. Ada felt the familiar walls rising, the need to deflect, to protect. But something in his steady gaze made her pause. "Because help comes with a cost," she said quietly. "Always." "Not always. In my experience." "Then you've had the wrong experiences." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was gentle, brotherly almost, but it sent an unexpected shiver through her. A crash from outside broke the moment. They both turned to the window to see a section of barn roof peeling back like paper. Cowboys were already running with ropes and tools. "Go," Ada said. "They need you." He hesitated. "Will you rest?" Yes. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But he went anyway, duty calling louder than concern. Ada waited until he was gone, then made her way carefully to the window. The hail was lessening, but the damage was done. Dead cattle dotted the pastures. Broken windows gaped in the bunkhouse. The vegetable garden Ruth had helped plant was nothing but mud and shredded stems. And through it all, Colt moved like a general among his troops, organizing, encouraging, leading by example. When a young cowboy panicked at the sight of his injured horse, Colt was there with calm words and steady hands. When the barn roof threatened to collapse entirely, he was first up the ladder. "He's something, isn't he?" Ruth's voice made Ada jump. Her friend stood in the doorway, clothes soaked and muddy. "When did you get here?" "Miguel brought me out when the storm started. Figured you might need help with injuries." Ruth joined her at the window. "Though seems like you're the one who needs tending." "I'm fine." "Sure you are." Ruth's knowing look was irritating. "That's why you're standing crooked and watching him like a hawk." "I'm observing the damage." "Mm-hmm." Ruth moved closer, lowering her voice. "Ada, honey, I know what that man back in St. Louis did to you." "Don't!" Ada's voice was ice. "I'm just saying, not all men are Marcus Wheeler. Some of them actually mean what they say." The name hit like a physical blow. Marcus Wheeler, with his pretty words and prettier lies, who'd promised marriage and delivered abandonment, Who'd taken her reputation, her savings, and her faith in love, leaving her with nothing but a broken engagement and a town's worth of whispers. "I need to check supplies," Ada said, moving toward the door. Ruth caught her arm gently. "Running from a good man won't heal what a bad one did." Ada pulled free. "I'm not running. I'm working." The afternoon dissolved into a blur of activity. Ada tended cuts and bruises, mixed poultices for the horses, helped board up broken windows. Her ribs protested every movement, but she ignored them. Pain was easier to bear than memory. As evening fell, an exhausted quiet settled over the ranch. Most of the hands had retreated to the bunkhouse to repair what they could of their belonging on. Ada was in the kitchen, helping Cookie salvage what food had survived, when Ivy burst through the door. "Miss Ada, Uncle Colt's hurt." Ada's heart stuttered. "Where?" "The barn. A beam fell, and—" Ada was already moving, Ivy's words fading behind her. She found Colt sitting on a hay bale, Miguel fussing over his shoulder while he tried to wave the older man off. "I'm fine," Colt was saying. "You're bleeding," Miguel countered. "Let me see." Ada's voice cut through their argument. Both men turned to her, and she saw the relief in Miguel's eyes. "Finally, someone with sense," the foreman muttered, stepping aside. The wound wasn't as bad as she'd feared, a deep gash along Colt's shoulder where the beam had caught him, but no signs of more serious damage. Still, it needed cleaning and stitches. "Main house," she ordered. "Now." For once, he didn't argue. Maybe it was the tone she used, the one that had gotten stubborn mothers through difficult births. Or maybe he was more hurt than he let on. In the infirmary, Ada worked in silence, aware of every breath he took, every small flinch he tried to hide. His shirt lay discarded, and she tried not to notice the map of old scars across his back and chest, evidence of a life lived hard and honestly. "Rustlers," he said, apparently reading her glance. "When I was 17, thought I could take 3 of them alone." "Foolish." "Young. Same thing, sometimes." He paused as she threaded her needle. "What about you, any scars?" "Everyone has scars," she said carefully. "Not all of them show." Her hands stilled for just a moment. "No, not all of them show." She began stitching, falling into the familiar rhythm. But this felt different from other times, more intimate. Maybe it was the quiet house around them, or the way the lamplight caught in his dark hair, or maybe it was the way he sat so still, trusting her completely. "Tell me about St. Louis," he said quietly. The needle slipped, pricking her finger. "What?" "Ruth mentioned you came from there. I've never been—" "There's nothing to tell." She resumed stitching, each movement precise. "I don't believe that." "Then believe this, some stories aren't worth telling." He was quiet long enough that she thought he'd dropped it. Then, "I was engaged once." Ada's hands paused again. "Her name was Sarah, banker's daughter from Denver. Pretty, refined, everything a successful rancher should want." His voice was neutral, like he was discussing cattle prices. "She visited the ranch exactly once, took one look at the dust and the work and the isolation, and suddenly remembered she had urgent business back in Denver." "I'm sorry," Ada said, "because what else was there to say? I'm not better to know before than after." He turned slightly, meeting her eyes. "But it taught me something. Love based on what someone can give you isn't love at all. Real love is what you build together, day by day, through drought and plenty alike." "That's a pretty thought," Ada said, tying off the last stitch. "It's not just a thought. I see it every day in the cowboys who stay through hard times, in the families who help each other without keeping score, in the—" He stopped. "I'm sermonizing, habit from dealing with Ivy's Sunday school questions." Despite herself, Ada smiled. "She does ask a lot of questions." Yesterday, she wanted to know why God made mosquitoes. He pulled his shirt back on carefully. I told her to ask Reverend Morrison. Coward. Strategic retreat. He stood, testing his shoulder. Thank you. It's what you pay me for. The words were automatic. A shield. No, he said firmly. It's not. Before she could ask what he meant, Ivy's voice called from outside. Uncle Colt, Sheriff Pike's here. They found Pike in the front room, hat in hands but authority in his bearing. Harlow Pike was everything a corrupt lawman should be, soft where he should be hard, hard where he should be yielding, with eyes that never quite met yours straight. A hell of a storm, Pike said by way of greeting. What do you want? Sheriff, Colt's tone was carefully neutral. Just checking on folks. Lot of damage in town. Pike's gaze wandered the room, lingering on the rifle above the fireplace. Heard you lost some cattle. News travels fast. It does. Pike smiled, an unpleasant expression. Also heard you've been making threats against Mr. Kincaid. I haven't spoken to Kincaid since the day he bought Raven Spring. That's not what he says. Claims you sent men to tear down his fence markers. Pike pulled out a notebook, making a show of consulting it. Says he'll press charges unless you agree to his water prices. Ada felt Colt tense beside her, but his voice remained even. His fence markers were on my land. That's for a court to decide, unless... Pike paused dramatically. Unless you'd rather settle this friendly like, Mr. Kincaid's a reasonable man. Pay the water fees, and all this unpleasantness goes away. Get out. Colt's voice was quiet, dangerous. Now, is that any way to talk to the law? Pike's hand drifted toward his gun. The law, Miguel spoke from the doorway. Several cowboys behind him. That's what you're calling yourself these days. Pike's face flushed. You'd best watch your mouth. Mexican. Or what? Colt stepped between them. You'll trump up charges against him too. The tension stretched taut. Ada found herself calculating distances Pike to his gun, Colt to the rifle, herself to the knife she kept in her medical bag. Then, unexpectedly, another voice cut through. Sheriff Pike, Jesse Pike, Harlow's younger brother, stood in the doorway. Ma's looking for you. Says you promised to fix her roof after the storm. Harlow's face went through several expressions before settling on annoyance. I'm conducting official business. Ma don't care. You know how she gets. Jesse's eyes met Ada's briefly, something unreadable in them. With ill grace, Harlow retrieved his hat. This isn't over, Everly? No, Colt agreed. It's not. After the Pike brothers left, silence filled the room. Finally, Miguel spoke. It's going to get worse. I know. Colt moved to the window, watching the lawmen ride away. Double the night guards, and nobody rides alone anymore. The cowboys dispersed, leaving Ada alone with Colt. She should go too, check on the injured horses, return to her cabin, but something held her there. Why didn't you pay? She asked. You could afford it. Could I? He turned to her. Today it's $50 per 1,000 gallons. Tomorrow it's $100. Next week he owns my ranch. He shook his head. Some fights you can't win by backing down. And if you lose, then I'd lose standing up. The simple courage in those words moved something in her chest. She thought of Marcus, who'd folded at the first sign of his family's disapproval. Of all the men who'd taken the easy path when the right one got hard. Your shoulder needs checking in the morning, she said, deflecting from thoughts that led nowhere safe. Yes, ma'am. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Same time as Ivy's arithmetic lesson. She has arithmetic with me. If you're willing. Miguel's been trying. But, Colt shrugged. She asked for you specifically. Another tie binding her to this place. Ada knew she should refuse, should keep her distance. But the memory of Ivy's frightened face during the storm, of small arms trusting her completely, made the word no impossible. After breakfast, she agreed. Walking back to her cabin through the storm-altered landscape, Ada felt the ground shifting beneath her feet in more ways than one. The ranch was seeping into her bones, its rhythms, its people, its quiet heroism in the face of hardship. And Colt Everly. She touched her ribs where they ached, remembering his careful hands, his steady presence. He was becoming something she hadn't planned for, couldn't defend against. The smart thing would be to leave now, before these feelings grew stronger, before she forgot that love was just another word for leaving. But as she reached her cabin and looked back at the main house, windows glowing warm against the darkness, Ada Quinn made a different choice. She'd stay. Not forever, she didn't believe in forever anymore, but for now. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Kincaid wouldn't stop. Pike would return, and the struggle for water would intensify. But tonight, with the scent of rain-washed earth filling her lungs and the memory of gentle strength in her mind, Ada allowed herself one dangerous thought. Maybe some things were worth the risk of breaking. The evening after the storm settled quiet and still, as if the earth itself needed rest. Ada found herself in the barn, removing stitches from Colt's shoulder by lamplight, the sweet smell of hay mixed with leather and horse, creating an intimacy she hadn't expected. "Hold still," she murmured, concentrating on her work. "I am still. You're breathing." Most folks consider that a good sign. His voice held gentle humor. She tried to ignore how the lamplight played across his skin, highlighting old scars and new muscle. Tried to ignore how carefully he sat, making her job easier despite what must be discomfort. "There." She tied off the last thread. "It's healing well." "Thanks to you." He reached for his shirt, then paused. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "The other day, when you said help always comes with a cost, I dismissed that." He met her eyes. "I shouldn't have. Your experiences are your own, and they're valid." The unexpected understanding made her throat tight. She busied herself packing her medical supplies. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." He stood, still holding his shirt. "Somebody hurt you, made you believe kindness was currency." The words were too close, too accurate. Ada's hands trembled as memories flooded back Marcus with his calculating smile. His promises that turned to smoke. His family's money that was supposed to secure their future but instead bought her silence and shame. "Don't!" The word came out raw. "I'm not asking for details." Colt's voice was gentle. "I'm saying I understand. And I'm saying that here now. What I offer comes with no ledger, no debt, no chains." She looked up at him then, really looked, saw the earnestness in his dark eyes, the patient strength in his bearing. He made no move toward her, simply stood there, offering truth without demanding anything in return. "I was engaged," she heard herself say, "in St. Louis, to a merchant's son named Marcus Wheeler." Colt said nothing, just waited. "He was charming, said all the right things. His family approved because I came from a respectable family, even if we weren't wealthy." She gripped the edge of the table. "Then his business failed. Suddenly, I wasn't respectable enough, not when there was a banker's daughter with a dowry that could save him." He broke it off. "Worse, he kept me hoping while courting her, made promises he never meant to keep." Her voice turned bitter. "When I finally confronted him, he laughed, said I should be grateful for the attention I'd received, that a woman in my position—" She stopped, unable to repeat the cruel words. "He was a fool," Colt said simply. "Was he?" "He got what he wanted, married money, saved his business. Last I heard, they were living in a fine house with servants and—" Her voice cracked. Then Colt did move, slowly, giving her time to retreat. He didn't embrace her, didn't presume. He simply took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "A man who measures worth by money isn't a man at all. He's just a ledger walking around in boots. Despite everything, Ada found herself almost smiling. That's poetic. Miguel says I read too much. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, the gesture absent-minded, comforting. But I mean it. You're worth more than all his merchant gold. You don't know me. I know enough. He squeezed her hand gently, then let go. I know you run toward danger instead of away. I know you treat injured cowboys and stubborn ranchers with equal skill. I know Ivy smiles more since you arrived. That's just... And I know you're scared. His voice dropped. Not of hard work or range wars or storms. You're scared of kindness, of gentleness, because the last person who was gentle with you used it as a weapon. The truth of it stole her breath. She turned away, but he continued. I'm not him, Ada. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just... He paused, seeming to search for words. I'm just trying to show you that gentle doesn't always mean weak, that sometimes strength looks like careful hands and patient hearts. The barn felt too small suddenly, too warm. Ada moved toward the door, needing air, needing distance, but his next words stopped her. I'm setting down my pride, he said quietly. The way a man sets down his gun when he enters a friend's house, not because I have to, because I choose to. She turned back to find him holding a bridle, running his fingers along the leather almost absently. The gesture triggered a memory from that morning watching him work with a spooked colt, how he'd set aside the lasso and approached empty-handed, patient and unthreatening. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Because you're worth the patience. He hung the bridle carefully on its peg. Because everybody deserves to be treated gently at least once. Because... He stopped, shook his head. Just because... Ada felt something crack inside her chest, some wall she'd built brick by bitter brick. The sensation terrified her. She'd survived by being strong, by needing no one. But standing here in this lamplight barn with this impossible man, she felt that strength wavering. I should go. She managed. Should you? It wasn't a challenge, just a quiet question, leaving the choice entirely to her. And somehow that made it harder to leave. Marcus had always pushed, always demanded. Colt simply stood there, patient as the mountains, letting her decide. Ivy needs help with her arithmetic, she said, grasping for solid ground. She's with Ruth tonight, baking cookies, I think. A smile tugged at his lips. Or making a mess. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Despite her turmoil, Ada found herself responding to his gentle humor. She tries. She does. Like someone else I know. He pulled on his shirt finally, wincing slightly. Always trying, always pushing forward, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Ada admitted, pain means you're still alive. Being alive means more than pain. He moved closer, still maintaining careful distance. It means joy, too, connection, the feeling of belonging somewhere. I don't belong anywhere. You could. The words were soft, almost tentative. Here, if you wanted. The offer hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Ada felt the pull of it, not just him, but the whole ranch, the work that mattered, the people who'd accepted her, the child who ran to greet her each morning. I can't, she whispered. Can't or won't? Does it matter? Yes. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and touched her face, just his fingertips against her cheek. Barely there. Can't means circumstances, won't means choice. One can change. It was the gentleness that undid her, the careful way he touched her, as if she were something precious and breakable, as if she deserved such careful handling. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. This is the gentle hands part, isn't it? She said, trying for lightness and failing. From Ruth's romantic notions. Maybe. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. Or maybe it's just Tuesday evening in a barn. and a man trying to show a woman she's worth more than some fool taught her to believe. Ada caught his wrist, meaning to pull his hand away. Instead, she found herself holding on, feeling his pulse steady under her fingers. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Trust, hope, believe in—" She gestured helplessly. "Then don't—" He turned his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Don't trust or hope or believe. Just be here. Now. Just let me—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Let me treat you the way you deserve. Not because you owe me anything, not because I expect anything, just because you're you, and you're here, and you matter." "Colt, you know what I see when I look at you." He squeezed her hand gently. "I see strength that shouldn't have to be so strong. I see walls that shouldn't have to be so high. I see someone who gives and gives but won't accept anything in return because she's afraid it comes with a price. Everything comes with a price." "No." His voice was firm but kind. "That's what he taught you. But it's a lie. Ada, some things are freely given, like rain on dry earth, like sunrise after a dark night, like—" He lifted their joined hands, pressed his lips to her knuckles in a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "Like this." Ada felt herself trembling, caught between old fears and new possibilities. The barn seemed to hold its breath around them, even the horses quiet in their stalls. She could run had run before, would run again, but something held her there, some stubborn hope she'd thought long dead. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know." He released her hand but didn't move away. "Be scared. But be here too. That's all I'm asking." "That's all?" The question came out shaky. "For now." He smiled, that quiet expression that transformed his weathered features. Baby steps. Ada Quinn. Rome wasn't built in a day, and trust takes longer than Rome. "You read too much poetry." "Guilty. Miguel's right about that." He moved toward the barn door, giving her space to breathe. "Will you think about it staying not just for the work, but because you want to?" Ada stopped, unable to promise what she wasn't sure she could deliver. "That's enough," he said, reading her hesitation. "That's more than enough." He left her there in the barn, taking his patient strength in gentle hands with him. Ada sank onto a hay bale, legs suddenly unsteady. She could still feel the warmth of his touch on her face, the careful way he'd held her hand. So different from Marcus's possessive grip, from the way he'd touched her like something he'd already bought and paid for. Through the barn door, she could see the main house, windows glowing with lamplight. She could hear distant laughter, Ruth's voice mixing with Ivy's higher tones, the sounds of home, of family, of belonging. Dangerous sounds, dangerous feelings. But as Ada sat there in the hay-scented darkness, she found herself thinking not of running but of staying, of what it might mean to accept gentleness without suspicion, of what it might feel like to lay down her own weapons the way Colt had laid down his pride. The thought terrified her. It also, for the first time in 3 years, gave her hope. She rose finally, moving toward her cabin on unsteady legs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Kincaid's schemes, Pike's threats, the ongoing battle for water and survival. But tonight, Ada Quinn allowed herself to hold on to the memory of gentle hands and patient hearts. Maybe, just maybe, some men meant what they said. Maybe some touches came without price tags. Maybe some strength really did look like tenderness. And maybe the most dangerous thought of all, she was worth the kind of careful handling Colt Everly offered. The stars were coming out as she reached her cabin, bright and constant above the storm-changed landscape. Ada paused, looking up at them, and made a decision. She'd stay. Not forever, she still couldn't think that far ahead, but for now, for tomorrow, for as long as her courage lasted. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, Ada was learning, could be their own kind of bravery. The dust from the railroad construction hung over Dustwater like a shroud. turning the dawn sky the color of dried blood. Ada saddled her horse in the pre-dawn darkness, medical bag secured behind her. What she was about to do was dangerous, possibly foolish, but Ruth's time was running out, and conventional methods had failed. "You sure about this?" Miguel asked, checking her saddle with practiced hands. "Jesse Pike sent word. He found something in the courthouse records." Ada pulled on her riding gloves, worn but serviceable. "If there's proof Kincaid falsified water rights, we need it." "Then you need company." Miguel whistled low, and two cowboys emerged from the shadows. "The boss would skin me alive if I let you ride alone." Ada started to protest, then stopped. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford now. "Tell Colt." "Tell me what?" His voice came from behind her, calm but with an edge. He stood in the barn doorway, fully dressed despite the early hour. "I'm riding to the courthouse," Ada said, meeting his eyes directly. "Jesse thinks he found evidence." Jesse Pike. Colt's tone was neutral. "The sheriff's brother." "The sheriff's brother who's been helping us." She swung into the saddle. "Unless you have a better idea." "I have several, starting with not trusting a Pike." He moved to his own horse, already saddled. "But since you're going anyway, you'll go with protection." "I don't need—" "Yes, you do." His voice brooked no argument. "This stopped being about pride the moment you started mattering to people here. To Ivy, to Ruth." A pause. "To me." The simple admission hung in the air between them. Ada felt her cheeks warm, and was grateful for the darkness. "Fine," she said, "but we leave now." They rode out as the first light touched the horizon down to Colt, Miguel, and two cowboys. The journey to the county seat would take them through Breakneck Pass, a narrow canyon that made Ada's skin crawl with its possibilities for ambush. "Why are you trusting Jesse?" Colt asked as they rode. "Because he's nothing like his brother." Ada adjusted her reins. "He came to Ruth's last week, warning us about Kincaid's plans. Said he couldn't stand by and watch anymore." "Could be a trap." "Could be." She glanced at him. "But sometimes you have to take chances on people." His smile was quick, surprised. "Learning that, are you—" "Maybe." They rode in comfortable silence until the sun climbed higher, baking the already parched earth. Ada found herself stealing glances at Colt, remembering their conversation in the barn. The way he'd touched her face still burned like a brand. "There." Miguel pointed ahead to where the trail narrowed between high rock walls. "If I were planning an ambush—" The shots came before he could finish. Ada's horse reared as bullets whined past. She fought for control, dimly aware of Colt shouting orders, of cowboys returning fire. "The rocks!" Colt grabbed her reins, pulling her horse toward a cluster of boulders. They tumbled from their saddles as more shots rang out. "How many?" one of the cowboys asked, pressing a hand to a bloody shoulder. "4, maybe 5. Miguel peered around their cover. "They've got the high ground." Ada was already moving to the injured cowboy, pulling supplies from her bag. The wound was clean, through and through. Lucky. "Can you move him?" she asked Colt. "Not without exposing ourselves." He checked his rifle. "They'll pick us off if we try for the horses." "Then we wait them out." "No water, no shade." His jaw tightened. "They can afford to wait. We can't." Ada finished bandaging the cowboy, her mind racing. The canyon walls were steep but not impossible. If someone could climb up, get behind the shooters. "No," Colt said, apparently reading her expression. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't have to. That's your 'I have a dangerous idea' face." "I don't have a—" Another volley of shots cut her off. When the echoes died, she heard something else. Hoofbeats coming from behind them. "Boss," Miguel warned. But the riders who appeared weren't more ambushers. Jesse Pike led 3 men, badges glinting in the sun. "Federal marshals," Jesse called out. Stand down! The shooting from above stopped abruptly. Ada heard scrambling, boots on rock. Then the sound of horses fleeing. You all right? Jesse swung down from his horse, genuine concern on his young face. Thanks to you. Colt stood slowly, gun still ready. Federal marshals. Judge Morrison called them in last week. Jesse grinned. Turns out the territorial governor takes a dim view of water rights fraud. One of the marshals, a weathered man with careful eyes, approached. You'd be Everly. I am? Marshal Tom Bedford. We'll need statements from all of you. He looked at the blood on Ada's hands. After you tend your wounded. An hour later, they sat in the relative cool of a canyon overhang while Ada checked the cowboy's bandage and the marshals took notes. Jesse had produced a leather portfolio filled with documents. Found these hidden in my brother's office, he said, spreading papers across a flat rock. Bills of sale, water certificates, all dated before the Territorial Water Act made them legal. Kincaid's been backdating documents, bribing clerks to insert them into official records. Ada leaned forward, studying the papers, her merchant background. The very thing that had brought her Marcus now proved useful. These ink formulations are wrong. This certificate claims to be from 1876, but this type of ink wasn't manufactured until 1879. You can prove that, Marshal Bedford asked. Any competent chemist could. She pointed to another document. And this seal, it's from a notary who died in 1875, but the document is dated 1877. Well, I'll be damned. Bedford gathered the papers carefully. Pardon my language, ma'am. This is exactly what we need. Will it be enough? Colt asked. Combined with witness testimony, more than enough. Bedford stood. We'll be arresting Kincaid and Sheriff Pike this afternoon. I suggest you folks make yourselves scarce until it's done. Men like that don't go down easy. They rode back toward the Everly Ranch as the afternoon heat reached its peak. Ada swayed in her saddle, exhaustion hitting her all at once. The danger, the revelations, the constant tension, it was taking its toll. Here, Colt appeared beside her, offering his canteen. I have my own. Yours is empty. You gave it all to Jenkins. He nodded toward the wounded cowboy. Drink. She did, the water warm but welcome. Thank you. You did good today. His voice was quiet, meant just for her. That ink analysis, that was brilliant. It was practical. Marcus's family dealt in office supplies. She handed back the canteen. Finally, something useful came from that association. Everything that made you who you are is useful. He corked the canteen. Even the painful parts, maybe especially those. They were passing through a grove of cottonwoods, the first shade in miles. Without warning, Colt reached over and caught her reins, bringing both horses to a stop. What? You're about to fall out of that saddle, he said. When's the last time you ate? Ada tried to remember. Yesterday. Thought so. He swung down from his horse, then reached up for her. Come on. I know you can, but you don't have to. His hands settled on her waist, steady and sure. Let someone help you, Ada, just this once. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the adrenaline crash, or the simple weariness of always being strong. Whatever the reason, Ada found herself leaning into his grip, letting him lift her down. Her knees buckled as her feet touched ground. Colt caught her, one arm around her waist, the other cradling her head against his shoulder. For a moment, they stood frozen like that, her face pressed against his shirt, breathing in the scent of leather and sage and safety. I've got you, he murmured. It's okay, I've got you. The words broke something in her. Not dramatically, not all at once, but a small crack in the wall she'd built. She let herself lean into him, just for a moment, feeling the solid strength of him, the careful way he held her. I'm not used to this, she whispered. I know. His hand smoothed over her hair, gentle as his voice. That's okay too. Miguel and the others had stopped a discreet distance away, giving them privacy. Colt guided her to a fallen log, producing hardtack and dried fruit from his saddlebags. Eat, he ordered gently. She did, surprised by her hunger. He sat beside her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. Can I ask you something? She said between bites. Always. Why offer marriage that day when you said I could avoid scandal by marrying you? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because the thought of you leaving made me realize something. What? That I'd gotten used to looking for you. He picked up a stick, drawing patterns in the dust. In the mornings, when I check the ranch. In the evenings, when Ivy tells me about her lessons. Even in between, I find myself wondering where you are, what you're thinking. Ada's breath caught. Colt, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know you're not ready, may never be, but you asked why, and that's the honest answer. I offered because the thought of not seeing you every day felt... He shrugged. Wrong. She set aside the food, suddenly not hungry. I don't know if I can give you what you want. I'm not asking you to. He finally looked at her, eyes earnest. I'm asking you to stay, to keep teaching Ivy, to keep healing people, to keep being part of this place. Whatever else happens or doesn't happen, that's up to you. And if nothing ever happens, then I'll have gotten to know a remarkable woman who makes my ranch and my life better by being in it. He smiled slightly. That's not nothing, Ada. Before she could respond, Miguel whistled a warning. Riders approaching, moving fast. Colt was on his feet instantly, hand on his gun, but relaxed as the riders came into view. It's Ruth, he said. Ada stood as her friend reined in hard, face flushed with exertion and excitement. They got him, Ruth gasped. The marshals arrested Kincaid an hour ago, and Pike, and that weasel of a clerk at the bank. She slid from her horse, grabbing Ada's hands. It's over. It's really over. The water rights? Colt asked. Being reviewed by the territorial judge. But Jesse says with the evidence you found, they'll be overturned. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I can keep the boarding house. We're free. Ada hugged her friend, feeling Ruth shake with relief. Over Ruth's shoulder, she saw Colt watching them with a soft expression. We should celebrate, Ruth said, pulling back. Tonight, dancing at the boarding house. Everyone's invited. I don't dance, Ada said automatically. You do tonight. Ruth's smile turned sly. I'm betting Mr. Everly knows how to waltz. Ruth. It's settled, her friend remounted with surprising agility. Sundown. Wear something pretty. She was gone before Ada could protest further, leaving awkward silence in her wake. You don't have to come, Ada said. Do you want me to... The simple question caught her off guard. Not will you come? Not I'll be there. But do you want me to? Once again, he was giving her the choice. Yes, she admitted quietly. I think I do. His smile was like sunrise. Then I'll be there. They mounted up and continued toward the ranch, the others falling in around them. Ada felt something shifting, some internal compass reorienting itself. The fight wasn't over. There would be legal battles, probably retaliation from Kincaid's associates. But for now, for today, they'd won something important. As they crested the last rise before the ranch, Colt moved his horse closer to hers. Ada. Yes. Save me a dance tonight. She looked at him, this complicated man who offered gentleness without weakness, strength without dominance, who gave her choices instead of ultimatums. I'll save you too, she said, and watched surprise and joy chase across his features. Maybe she was learning to trust after all. Maybe some chances were worth taking. Maybe some gentle hands were worth holding on to. As they rode down toward the ranch, toward home, Ada Quinn allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, not all love was a lie. The celebration at Ruth's boarding house had just reached its peak when Miguel burst through the door, face tight with urgency. The fiddle music scraped to a halt. "Boss," he said to Colt, "they've got Ivy." Ada felt the blood drain from her face. Beside her, Colt went perfectly still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. "Who?" His voice was deadly quiet. "The rail spurs. Left this at the ranch." Miguel handed over a piece of paper. Colt read it, jaw tightening. Without a word, he passed it to Ada. The message was brief. The girl for the water rights. Midnight at Raven Spring. Come alone or she dies. "It's Kincaid," Ruth breathed. "Even from jail, he's—" "No." Jesse Pike stepped forward from the corner where he'd been standing. "My brother's still got men on his payroll. This is their last play." The boarding house erupted in voices, cowboys demanding action, townsfolk offering help. Colt raised a hand for silence. "I'm going," he said simply. "Like hell you're going alone," Miguel protested. "They'll kill her if I don't." "They'll kill you both regardless," Ada said, mind racing. "This isn't about water rights anymore. It's about revenge." Colt met her eyes. "I can't risk Ivy." "Then we don't." Ada turned to the room. "How many water wagons do we have?" "3," someone answered. "Why?" "Because we're going to give them what they want." She moved to the table, spreading out a napkin and sketching quickly. "The spring, the approach trails, the canyon walls, we know this terrain better than they do." "Ada," Colt warned. "No." She faced him. "You trusted me to stay. Trust me now." Something shifted in his expression. "What do you need?" 20 minutes later, they had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than walking into certain death. Ada changed from her dancing dress into riding clothes, strapping her medical bag across her back. When she emerged from Ruth's room, Colt was waiting. "You don't have to come," he said. "Yes, I do." She checked the load on the Derringer Ruth had given her. "She trusts me. If she's hurt or scared." "She will be." His voice cracked slightly. "God, Ada, if something happens to her—" She grabbed his hands, feeling them tremble. "Nothing will happen to her. We won't let it." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you taught me something." She squeezed his hands. "Real strength isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing when to stand together." He pulled her close, just for a moment, his forehead resting against hers. "If we get through this—" "When?" she corrected. "When we get through this." "When we get through this," he agreed. "I have things to say to you. Then you'd better stay alive to say them." They rode out in 3 groups. The water wagons went first, loaded with barrels and driven by volunteers, cowboys, and townsmen alike. Colt followed with the official party, visible and loud. Ada went with Miguel and Jesse's group, taking the hidden trail that wound above the spring. The moon was rising as they reached their positions. From her vantage point, Ada could see the spring clearly, a dark mirror reflecting stars. The rail spurs had made camp on the far side. Maybe a dozen men. And there, tied to a wagon wheel, was Ivy. Even from this distance, Ada could see the child wasn't moving. Rage filled her, cold and clarifying. These men had taken an innocent child, used her as a bargaining chip. Whatever mercy she might have felt evaporated. Below, Colt rode into the clearing, hands visible, apparently alone as demanded. The leader of the rail spurs stepped forward, a man Ada recognized as Harlow Pike's deputy, Carl Morrison. "Everly," Morrison called. "You come to sign over them water rights." "Let me see her first," Colt demanded. Morrison gestured lazily. One of his men cut Ivy loose, dragging her forward. The child stumbled but raised her head, and Ada's heart clenched at the defiance still visible in her small face. Uncle Colt Ivy tried to run to him, but Morrison caught her arm. "Papers first," he said. Colt dismounted slowly, pulling documents from his coat. "Let her go, and they're yours." "See, that's the problem." Morrison smiled unpleasantly. "We got word from Mr. Kincaid. Seems he wants more than paper now. He wants you dead." "Then you'll never get the rights," Colt said evenly. "Oh, we'll get them. From your estate. After we find your body in the desert, killed by bandits along with your ward." Morrison drew his gun. "Tragic story, but that's the West for you." Ada held her breath, waiting for the signal. In the darkness behind Morrison's camp, she could see movement, the water wagons getting into position. "Just one problem with that plan," Colt said. "What's that?" Colt smiled. "I don't travel alone." The night erupted. Water burst from the wagons, high-pressure streams knocking men off their feet. Cowboys appeared from behind rocks, rifles ready. Morrison's men scrambled for cover, but they were caught in the open. Perfect targets. Ada was already moving, sliding down the steep trail she'd scouted earlier. She had one goal: get to Ivy. The battle raged around her, gunfire and shouts mixing with the splash of water. A rail spur appeared in her path. She shot him with Ruth's derringer without hesitation. Ada Ivy's voice, high and frightened. She found the girl crouched behind the wagon wheel, hands still tied. Ada cut her bonds quickly, pulling her close. "I've got you, sweetheart. You're safe now." "I knew you'd come," Ivy sobbed. "You and Uncle Colt, I knew you would." A shadow fell over them. Morrison stood there, gun raised, face twisted with fury. "Should have stayed in town, lady." Ada pushed Ivy behind her, facing him without flinching. "Should have stayed out of our territory." "Your territory," Morrison laughed. "You're just Everly's hired help. Another saddle tramp he'll forget when—" The words died as Colt appeared behind him, moving silent as a ghost. One swift motion and Morrison was disarmed, on his knees. "You were saying something about my family." Colt's voice was ice. "Family," Morrison spat. "She's just—" "Careful." Colt pressed the gun barrel to Morrison's temple. "Real careful what you say next." Ada felt something flutter in her chest at the word family, but there was no time to examine it. The battle was turning. With their leader down and Surprise lost, the rail spurs were surrendering or fleeing. Morris and Jesse Pike emerged from the smoke, badge glinting. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy." "You can't arrest me," Morrison snarled. "Your brother." "My brother's already in federal custody," Jesse said calmly, "and you're about to join him." As the marshals took Morrison away, Colt dropped to his knees beside Ada and Ivy, gathering them both close. Ada felt him shaking and realized he'd been terrified, had hidden it until now. "I'm sorry," Ivy whispered. "I was in town with Cookie, and they grabbed me and—" "Shh." Colt kissed the top of her head. "Not your fault, little one. Never your fault." "Are you hurt?" Ada asked, checking them both with quick hands. "No." Colt caught her hand. "Are you—" "No. You came down that cliff like an avenging angel." His voice held wonder. "I've never seen anything like it." "I told you, I don't run from fights that matter." "No," he agreed. "You run toward them." Miguel appeared, grinning widely. "All secure, boss. Lost a lot of water, but we've got most of them rounded up." "The wounded?" "Doc Morrison seeing to them." Miguel's grin widened. "Both sides. Man takes his oath serious." As they sorted out the aftermath, Ada found herself staying close to Colt and Ivy. The little girl wouldn't let go of either of them, one hand clutching Ada's skirt, the other gripping Colt's coat. "Can Ada stay with us tonight?" Ivy asked as they prepared to leave. "Please." Colt looked at Ada, question in his eyes. If she wants to. Yes, Ada said without hesitation. I'll stay. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Ivy asleep in Colt's arms within minutes. Ada rode beside them, watching over both in the moonlight. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her aware of a dozen small hurts, but also of something else, a fierce protectiveness she'd thought burned out of her. At the ranch, she helped put Ivy to bed, the child insisting Ada stay until she fell asleep. When she finally emerged from Ivy's room, she found Colt on the porch, 2 cups of coffee waiting. Thought you might need this, he said. She accepted gratefully, sitting beside him on the bench. Is it always like this, the violence, the threats? No, usually it's just hard work and weather. He paused. But when it comes, we face it. Together. Together, she repeated, tasting the word. Ada. He set down his cup, turning to face her fully. What Morrison said was wrong, she finished. I know. Do you? He searched her face. Because I need you to understand something. You're not hired help to me. Haven't been for a while now. Then what am I? Essential. The word came out rough. To the ranch, to Ivy. A pause. To me. Ada's breath caught. Colt. I know you're not ready for declarations. I know you've got walls I haven't earned the right to breach. He took her hand carefully. But tonight, when I thought I might lose you both. But you didn't. She laced their fingers together. We're here. We're safe. We won. We did. He brought their joined hands up, pressing her knuckles to his lips. Because of you, your plan, your courage. Our plan, our courage. She met his eyes. I meant what I said earlier. Real strength is standing together. Is that what we're doing, standing together? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Ada thought of all the reasons to say no, to retreat, to protect herself. Then she thought of Ivy's trust, of Ruth's joy, of the cowboys who'd risked everything for one small girl, of this man who'd shown her that gentle hands could also be strong ones. Yes, she whispered. I think we are. His smile was like dawn breaking. Even after tonight, the violence, the danger. Especially after tonight. She squeezed his hand. You didn't hesitate, not for a second. You would have died for her. And you rode down a cliff for her. His thumb traced circles on her palm. We make a good team. We do. The admission came easier than expected. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear as the moon set. Ada felt something settling in her chest, some last resistance crumbling. Not all at once, she wasn't built for sudden transformations, but brick by brick, her walls were coming down. I should check on Ivy, she said eventually. Stay. His voice was soft. Just a little longer. Please. She did, leaning into his warmth as the night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal battles over water rights, rebuilding what violence had torn down, the slow work of trust and healing. But tonight, sitting beside this man who'd proven himself in every way that mattered, Ada Quinn allowed herself to believe in the possibility of belonging, of family, of love that wasn't a lie but a choice, made fresh each day in small acts of courage and care. Thank you, Colt said quietly. For saving her, for saving us. We saved each other, Ada corrected. That's what family does. The word slipped out before she could stop it. She tensed, but Colt only pulled her closer. Yes, he agreed. That's exactly what family does. As if in response to their words, Ivy appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. Can't sleep, she mumbled. Without discussion, they made room for her between them on the bench. Ivy curled up against Ada's side, feet in Colt's lap, and was asleep again within minutes. Look at us, Colt murmured. A proper family portrait. Ada's throat tightened, but this time with joy rather than fear. "Don't get too comfortable. I still can't cook worth beans." "Good thing I can." His smile was tender in the darkness. "Something else we can do together." Together? The word no longer scared her. Sitting here with these two people who'd become essential to her own heart. Ada finally understood that some things were worth the risk. Some fights were worth joining. Some families were worth choosing. And some love patient, gentle, proven in fire was worth believing in after all. The courthouse in Dustwater had never seen such a crowd. Every bench was filled, people standing along the walls, spilling out into the dusty street. Ada sat in the front row between Ruth and Ivy, her hands folded carefully in her lap to hide their trembling. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge William Morrison presiding." Judge Morrison, no relation to the arrested deputy, was a small man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He surveyed the packed courtroom before speaking. "We're here to address multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Given the interconnected nature of these crimes, I'll be hearing all related cases today." He adjusted his spectacles. "Bring in the defendants." Ada watched as they filed in, Silas Kincaid in his rumpled suit, trying to maintain his banker's dignity. Harlow Pike, deflated without his sheriff's badge. Carl Morrison and several rail spurs, shackled and sullen. Each faced the bench with varying degrees of defiance or defeat. "Mr. Kincaid," the judge began, "you stand accused of falsifying water rights documents, conspiracy to defraud, and orchestrating violence against citizens of this territory. How do you plead?" Kincaid's lawyer, imported from Denver, stood smoothly. "Not guilty, Your Honor. My client is a respected businessman who—" "Save it for your argument, counselor." Judge Morrison turned to the prosecutor. "Present your evidence." What followed was damning. Document after document, witness after witness. Ada was called to testify about the ink analysis, her voice steady despite Kincaid's glare. Jesse Pike took the stand, producing records from his brother's office that showed payments from Kincaid to various deputies who terrorized ranchers. "Traitor!" Harlow Pike hissed at his brother. "Order," the judge commanded. "Continue, Mr. Pike." Jesse's testimony was devastating. Names, dates, amounts a web of corruption laid bare. When he finished, the courtroom was silent. Then came Colt's testimony about the kidnapping, his voice controlled but with an undercurrent of fury that made Ada's chest tight. He described finding Ivy gone, the ransom note, the ambush at Raven Spring. "They took a 6-year-old child," he said, looking directly at the defendants. "Used her as bait. Would have killed her without hesitation." "Objection," Kincaid's lawyer called. "Speculation." "I'll allow it," Judge Morrison said coldly. "Continue, Mr. Everly." The defense tried their best, but the evidence was overwhelming. Kincaid claimed the documents were legitimate, that he was a victim of misunderstanding. Harlow Pike insisted he was maintaining order. Carl Morrison said nothing at all, just stared at the floor. After 3 hours of testimony, Judge Morrison called a recess. Ada stepped outside for air, finding Colt on the courthouse steps. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better than them?" She nodded toward the jail wagon. "Justice is actually happening." "It is." He touched her arm gently. "Thanks to you. That ink analysis was brilliant." "It was just observation and—" "Ada," he smiled. "Take the compliment." Before she could respond, Jesse Pike approached. Hat in hand? "Mr. Everly, Miss Quinn, I wanted to apologize. For my brother. For not acting sooner. You acted when it mattered." Colt said firmly, "That took courage." Jesse's young face showed relief. "I'm leaving after this. Got an offer to deputy in California. Fresh start." "Good luck to you," Ada said, meaning it. Not all Pikes were cut from the same cloth. They filed back in for the verdict. Judge Morrison wasted no time. Silas Kincaid, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 15 years hard labor in the territorial prison. The banker sagged in his chair. Harlow Pike, guilty, 10 years. Carl Morrison and Associates, guilty, 5 to 10 years depending on individual involvement. The gavel came down with finality, but the judge wasn't finished. Now, regarding the water rights, he shuffled papers. All documents filed by Mr. Kincaid are hereby declared null and void. Water access to Raven Spring returns to traditional use patterns, shared resource for all area ranchers and residents. A cheer went up from the crowd. Ada felt tears prick her eyes as ranchers who'd faced ruin embraced each other. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I am appointing a water commission to prevent future disputes. Mr. Everly, Mr. Ortega, Mrs. Calder, you'll serve as founding members along with 2 other citizens to be selected by vote. Your Honor. Colt stood. I'm honored, but no buts. Mr. Everly, you've shown leadership and integrity. The territory needs men like you in positions of responsibility. The judge's expression softened slightly. All of you have shown what community means. Don't let that spirit die. As the courtroom emptied, Ada found herself surrounded by grateful ranchers and townspeople. Women who'd snubbed her for being unmarried now pressed her hands, thanking her for saving their homes. It was overwhelming and wonderful and strange. Let's get out of here, Ruth suggested, reading her expression. They made their way to the boarding house, where Ruth had prepared a celebration feast. The main room filled quickly cowboys, ranchers, townspeople mingling freely. Even Doc Morrison came, shaking Colt's hand gravely. No hard feelings about my nephew, I hope, the doctor said. None toward you, Colt assured him. We're judged by our own actions, not our relations. As the afternoon wore on, Ada found herself watching the celebration from a quiet corner. Ivy played with other children, her ordeal already fading into resilience. Miguel told stories to a rapt audience. Ruth beamed as she served food to people who could now afford to pay their bills. Hiding Colt appeared beside her, 2 cups of punch in hand. Observing, she accepted the drink gratefully. It's a lot to take in. This morning they were facing ruin. Now they have hope. He leaned against the wall beside her. Thanks in large part to you. To all of us. True, but you were the catalyst. Your courage, your intelligence, you changed things. Ada. She studied his profile, this man who'd shown her different kinds of strength. I wasn't the only one who changed things. He turned to her, and something in his expression made her heart skip. Ada? Mr. Everly. Mayor Thompson appeared, already slightly drunk on relief and whiskey. Speech the hero of the hour must speak. I'm no hero, Colt protested. But the crowd wouldn't be denied. They pushed him to the front of the room, calling for words. Colt looked helplessly at Ada, who hid a smile behind her cup. All right, he said finally, but I'll keep it short. We faced men who thought water was a commodity to be hoarded, sold to the highest bidder. They forgot that in this land, water is life, and real life, is about sharing, about community, about standing together when times get hard. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. We won today not because of any one person, but because we remembered who we are. Neighbors, friends. His eyes found Ada across the room. Family. That's what beats men like Kincaid every time. The cheer that went up shook the rafters. As Colt made his way back through back slaps and handshakes, Ada felt her chest tight with emotion. Family. He'd said it publicly, claimed it openly. Dance with me, he said when he reached her. Here now. Here, now. He held out his hand. Unless you've forgotten you owe me too. The crowd parted as he led her to the cleared floor. Someone started the fiddle a slow waltz this time. Colt's hand settled on her waist. Proper distance maintained, but somehow still intimate. "People are watching," she murmured. "Let them." He guided her through the steps with surprising grace. "I want everyone to know." "Know what?" "That Ada Quinn matters to me. That she's under my protection and," his voice dropped, "my courtship, if she'll allow it." Ada missed a step. "Courtship." "I told you I had things to say when this was over." He spun her gently. "I'm saying them now, in front of witnesses, so you know I mean it. Colt, I know you need time. I know trust comes hard, but I'm a patient man. Ada Quinn, and you're worth waiting for." Around them, other couples had joined the dancing, giving them some privacy in the midst of motion. Ada felt exposed and safe simultaneously, a contradiction that somehow made sense. "What if I'm never ready?" she asked quietly. "What if I can't give you what you deserve? You already have." His hand tightened on hers. "You saved Ivy. You stood with us against armed men. You let me see who you really are beneath those walls. That's everything. Ada." The music swelled, and he dipped her slightly, properly, making her laugh despite herself. When he brought her back up, their faces were close. "I'm not good at this," she admitted. "At dancing, you're doing fine." "At believing, at hoping, at—" she gestured helplessly. "At letting yourself be loved." His voice was gentle. "That's all right. I'm good enough at it for both of us. For now." The song ended, but he didn't immediately release her. Around them, people applauded, whether for the musicians or for them. Ada wasn't sure. Miss Ada Ivy appeared, tugging at her skirt. "Will you dance with me next?" Grateful for the interruption, Ada let the child pull her into a lively reel, but she remained aware of Colt watching from the side, patient and certain as the mountains. As evening fell, clouds gathered on the horizon, real ones this time heavy with promise. The celebration began to wind down, people heading home before the weather turned. "I should get Ivy back." Colt said, "Will you come with us?" It wasn't really a question about transportation. Ada understood that. He was asking her to come home, to acknowledge what had been building between them since that first day in Ruth's parlor. "Yes," she said simply. The ride to the ranch was quiet, Ivy sleeping against Ada's shoulder in the wagon. The first drops of rain began to fall as they reached the main house, fat, heavy drops that hit the parched earth like benediction. "Rain," Colt said unnecessarily, wonder in his voice. By the time they got Ivy inside and settled, it was pouring. Real rain, not the brief teases they'd had before. Ada stood on the porch, watching water pour off the roof, breathing in the smell of wet earth and sage. "First real rain in months," Colt said, joining her. "Seems fitting, after today." "New beginnings," Ada murmured. "Yes." He moved closer, not touching, but near enough she could feel his warmth. "Ada, I need to ask you something." She tensed, but he continued gently. "Stay, not just tonight, but stay. Make this your home, your real home." "As what?" The question came out rougher than intended. "As whatever you're comfortable being. Ivy's teacher, the ranch's healer. My—" He paused. "My whatever you'll let me be to you." "That's not fair to you." "I'll decide what's fair to me." His voice was firm. "I'm not asking you to make promises you're not ready for. I'm asking you to stop running, to let yourself belong somewhere, with people who care about you." Thunder rolled across the valley, and the rain intensified. Ada watched it fall, feeling her last defenses washing away like dust. "I don't know how to stop being scared," she admitted. "You don't have to stop being scared. You just have to stay anyway." He finally touched her, just his fingers grazing hers. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. Ada, it's acting despite it." You read too much poetry, she said, but she turned her hand to lace their fingers together. Miguel's still complaining about that. His thumb stroked hers. Is that a yes? Ada thought of all the reasons to say no. Then she thought of Ivy's trust, Ruth's friendship, the ranch that had become more home than anywhere she'd lived, this man who offered patience and protection and possibility. It's a maybe, she said, a probable, yes, conditionally. Conditionally? He was trying not to smile. You have to keep teaching Ivy arithmetic. I'm terrible at it. Done. And I maintain my own cabin. I need space. Sometimes. Of course. And she ran out of conditions, faced with his easy acceptance. And, he prompted gently, and you have to keep being patient with me, even when I'm difficult, even when I push you away, even when... Ada, he turned to face her fully, cupping her face with his free hand. I'll be patient with you forever if that's what it takes. You're not a conquest or a challenge. You're the woman who makes my life better just by being in it, however you're willing to be in it. The rain poured around them, creating a curtain of privacy on the porch. Ada leaned into his touch, feeling something ancient and scared inside her finally begin to heal. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay. I'll try. I'll trust. As much as I can. His smile lit up the stormy evening. That's all I ask. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent, and Ada felt the last of her resistance crumble. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steady as rain, washing away the dust of old pain. They stood there together, watching the storm bring life back to the parched land. And Ada Quinn finally understood that some foundations weren't built on lies, but on patience, on daily choices, on gentle hands that held without grasping. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Building the Water Commission, healing from the violence, learning to be part of something larger than survival. But tonight, with rain drumming on the roof and Colt's hand warm in hers, Ada chose to believe that love wasn't always a lie. Sometimes it was just rain after drought. Sometimes it was coming home. Sometimes it was as simple and as complicated as staying. Spring arrived in the valley like a kept promise, painting the grasslands green where fire and drought had left scars. Ada stood in the doorway of her medical office, a proper one now, built with the help of neighbors over the winter months, watching new calves explore on wobbly legs. Admiring your handiwork, Colt's voice came from behind her. She turned, unable to stop the smile that came so easily now. The calves aren't my handiwork. I meant the grass. He gestured to the verdant pastures. The Water Commission's new irrigation system. Your idea to rotate access has the whole valley blooming. Our idea, she corrected, moving aside so he could enter. How's the fence line? Holding. Miguel says we'll have the south pasture enclosed by week's end. He set a basket on her desk. Ruth sent lunch. Said you missed breakfast again. I was delivering the Hartley baby, a girl, healthy and loud. Ada unpacked the basket, finding fresh bread and early strawberries. Where's Ivy? School. Can you believe it? Our wild child, sitting still for Miss Patterson's lessons. His eyes crinkled. Though she still prefers your teaching, she's learning. Ada handed him bread. We all are. It had been a year since the trial, a year of slow changes and careful growth. The Water Commission met monthly now, ensuring fair access for all. Former enemies had become cautious allies, united by the understanding that cooperation meant survival. Jesse wrote. Colt said, producing a letter. He's been made full sheriff in Sacramento. Sends his regards. Good for him. Ada meant it. Jesse had proven that people could choose better paths. There's something else. Colt seemed suddenly uncertain. The territorial governor's forming a medical board. Doc Morrison recommended you for a position. Ada's hand stilled. Me? but I'm not formally trained. You've delivered half the babies in the valley this year, treated everything from snakebite to pneumonia. He met her eyes. You're already doing the work. This would make it official. It would mean traveling to Denver for meetings. I know. His voice was carefully neutral. If you want to accept, we'll make it work. The word that had once terrified her now brought only warmth. I'll think about it. They ate in companionable silence, the spring breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers through the open door. Ada found herself studying Colt's profile, noting new lines around his eyes from sun and laughter. The way his hair had grown slightly too long. You're staring, he said without looking up. Observing, she corrected, using their old joke. And what do you observe? A man who needs a haircut. He laughed, the sound filling her small office. Ruth's been saying the same. Maybe I'm going wild in my old age. 35 is hardly old. Feels old sometimes. He grew serious. Ada, there's something I need to ask you. Her stomach fluttered, but not with the old fear. She'd learned to read his moods, knew when something important was coming. The ranch is doing well, he continued. Better than ever. Actually, the cattle contracts, the water rights secured. The new horses Miguel's been training. He paused. I'm in a position to provide properly now. For a family. You already provide for a family, Ivy. I mean a bigger family. He turned to face her fully. I mean you, Ada. The words hung between them like morning mist, delicate and profound. Ada's hands trembled slightly as she set down her cup. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking wrong, probably. He rubbed his neck, suddenly looking younger. I had a whole speech planned, about partnership and building things together and how you've made the ranch a home. But sitting here, all I can think is how I don't want to do any of it without you. Colt. I know you need your independence. I'm not asking you to give that up. He reached for her hand, movements careful as always. Keep your practice. Travel for the medical board if you want. I want to come home to you. Want you to come home to me. Official-like. Ada looked at their joined hands, his sun-darkened and calloused, hers bearing the small scars of countless medical procedures. Working hands, gentle hands. I used to believe love was a lie, she said quietly. I know. You taught me different, not with words, but with actions, every day, in small ways. She met his eyes. You never pushed, never demanded. You just stayed. Easiest thing I ever did, he said, staying near you. I'm not easy to live with. I get focused on work. Forget meals. I need solitude sometimes. I'll always want my own space. Ada, he squeezed her hand. I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to be yourself, with me, forever, if you'll have me. Through the window, she could see the ranch spread out below the house where Ivy played, the barns Miguel managed with steady competence, the corrals full of healthy horses. But more than buildings, she saw community, cowboys who'd become friends, neighboring ranchers who shared Sunday dinners, a life built on mutual respect and common purpose. Yes, she said simply. Yes, his voice cracked slightly. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll build a bigger family with you. Yes to all of it. She laughed, feeling lightness she'd never imagined possible. But I'm keeping this office. Wouldn't expect otherwise. He pulled her close, kissing her with a joy that made her dizzy. When? Soon, she decided. Before calving season gets busy, a simple ceremony. Just family and close friends. Ruth will insist on cooking. Miguel will insist on music. Ivy will insist on flowers. Lots of flowers. They smiled at each other, planning already, building their future in words and hopes. That evening, they told Ivy together. The child's shriek of joy probably reached town. Can I be in the wedding? Can I carry flowers? Will Ada live with us all the time now? The questions tumbled out faster than they could answer. Yes to all of it, Colt said, catching her in a hug. If that's what Ada wants. It is, Ada confirmed, feeling the rightness of it in her bones. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, in the meadow behind the ranch where wildflowers bloomed in profusion. Ada wore her best dress, practical blue cotton with Ruth's mother's lace at the collar. Colt wore his Sunday suit, looking uncomfortable but handsome. Reverend Morrison performed the ceremony, his words simple and direct. Marriage, he said, is like this land. It requires work, patience, and faith in tomorrow's rain. But tend it well, and it will sustain you through all seasons. When Colt kissed her, gentle as always, but with new promise, the assembled crowd cheered. Cowboys threw their hats. Ruth cried openly, and Ivy scattered so many flower petals that they'd be finding them for weeks. The reception was held in the barn, transformed with lanterns and ribbons. The whole valley came, bringing food and music and goodwill. Former adversaries shared tables, united now in celebration rather than conflict. No regrets, Colt asked as they danced, the fiddle playing sweet and slow. None, Ada assured him. Well, maybe one. His brow furrowed. What? I should have let you catch me that first day. Would have saved us some time. He laughed, spinning her under his arm. Maybe, but we got here anyway. We did. She leaned into him, feeling the solid truth of it. And here is good. As the evening deepened, Ada found a moment to step outside. The stars spread above her, brilliant in the clear air. She thought of the woman she'd been angry, closed off, certain that love meant leaving. That woman seemed like a stranger now. You all right? Ruth joined her, wrapping a shawl around Ada's shoulders. More than all right. Ada hugged her friend. Thank you for everything, for taking me in, for pushing when I needed pushing, for believing I could be more than I was. Oh, honey, Ruth's eyes misted. You were always more. You just needed to see it yourself. They stood together, watching through the barn doors as Colt danced with Ivy, the child standing on his boots, both of them laughing. Miguel played his guitar. Cowboy sang badly but with enthusiasm, and the whole scene glowed with community and joy. I have something for you, Ruth said, producing a small package, a wedding gift. Ada unwrapped it carefully, finding a silver thimble engraved with intertwining vines. Ruth, it's beautiful. It was my mother's. She always said it brought luck in building a home. Ruth smiled. Seems you could use it. What with the expansion plans? Expansion? Oh, please. You think the whole valley doesn't know Colt's already planning to add rooms to the house? That man's expecting a passel of children. Ada blushed. We haven't discussed. You will. Ruth patted her arm. In your own time, your own way, like everything else you two do. Later, much later, after the guests had gone and Ivy was asleep, Ada and Colt sat on their porch now, officially. The night was soft around them, full of spring sounds and promise. Thank you, Colt said quietly. For what? For taking a chance on me, on us, on this place. He laced their fingers together, for teaching me that gentle hands could be strong ones. I thought you taught me that. Maybe we taught each other. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing the new gold band she wore. Partners in all things. Partners, she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across the stars. In the barn, a cow lowed softly. From the bunkhouse came the faint sound of a harmonica. The ranch settled into sleep around them, peaceful and whole. I love you, Ada said, the words still new enough to feel like a gift. I should have said it sooner, but... You said it in 100 ways before you used words. He pulled her closer. Every stitch you sewed, every patient you treated, every time you stayed instead of running. I heard you fine. Still, you deserve the words. I have them now. We have time for all the words. He smiled against her hair. A lifetime's worth. A lifetime. Once. That would have terrified her. Now it felt like barely enough. There was so much to build, to share, to discover together. The Hartley baby, she said suddenly. They named her Hope. Good name, Colt murmured. Fitting for these times. I was thinking... She paused, gathering courage. If we have a daughter someday, I'd like to call her Faith. His arms tightened around her. Faith, he repeated. I like it. And if we have a son? Trust, she suggested, half joking. Perfect. Hope, faith, and trust. We'll populate the whole valley with virtues. They laughed together, quiet in the darkness, planning impossibilities that no longer seemed impossible. Inside the house, their home now, Ada's medical bag sat beside Colt's work gloves on the table, her sewing basket nested next to his ledgers. Small signs of lives intertwining, of solitary souls choosing connection. Above the mantel hung 3 items: a horseshoe for luck, the silver thimble Ruth had given them, and a simple sampler Ivy had made with Ada's help. The child's crooked stitches spelled out, love is patient, love is kind, love is coming home. And it was, every day, in small acts and grand gestures, in gentle hands and steady hearts. Love was coming home to stay, as the night deepened and they finally went inside together. Ada Quinn Everly understood at last that some lies were worth unlearning, some walls were meant to fall, some hearts were made to be held with careful hands until they remembered how to trust. And some loved the real kind. The lasting kind was worth everything it cost to believe in it again. The door closed softly behind them, but the windows glowed warm with lamplight, beacons in the darkness that said, here is home, here is family, here is love that chose to stay. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please leave a comment below and share your thoughts about Ada and Colt's journey. If you enjoyed this tale from the Old West, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more stories of love, courage, and redemption on the frontier. Don't forget to like this video and hit the hype button to help more listeners discover these heartfelt stories. Your support means the world and helps keep these tales alive. Until next time, partners.